Hi everyone, it's Brett. Now it looks like I'm playing the original Super Mario Bros. From the Nintendo Entertainment System, but in actuality, I'm playing Super Mario Maker 2, because something like this would never happen in the original game. This might not be Super Mario Bros., but I think I'd like to take a look back at that famous game. Super Mario Bros. This isn't the first game the Mario Brothers appeared in, but this was the first game in the 2D Mario series, and it laid out the groundwork for the other Super Mario Bros. Games that would be made afterwards. Development began for Super Mario Bros. In the 80s. Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka designed the game. It was being developed alongside The Legend of Zelda. While Zelda was focusing to be an exploration game with puzzle solving, Super Mario Bros. Was focusing to be a straightforward action game. I think that it's interesting to note that during development, they were thinking about having Mario shoot bullets. That's absurd! I'm sure glad they went with Mario shooting fire out of his hand instead. Anyway, Super Mario Bros. Would be released on the Famicom in Japan on September 13th, 1985, and later come to the West on the Nintendo Entertainment System, most likely between October or November 1985. The exact release of the game in the West seems to be unknown, but the release date for the remake on the Game Boy Color in the West is known. Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, released on May 10th, 1999, was my first experience playing Super Mario Bros. This game is just one of the many remakes and re-releases of Super Mario Bros. Just like I did when I first played the game, I won't be playing it on the NES. Instead, I'll be using the Nintendo Switch to play the game. It's time to jump on into Super Mario Bros. The story is simple enough. The Koopa tribe has invaded the Mushroom Kingdom. Princess Toadstool is being held captive by the Great Koopa Turtle King, and she is the only person that can reverse the magic spell that has been put on the Mushroom people. So it's up to the Mario Brothers to save the princess. The manual uses some older names for some of the characters, but I'll be referring to Princess Toadstool as Princess Peach, Great Koopa Turtle King as Bowser, and the Mushroom People as Toad, since those are the names that are most commonly used now. Interestingly enough, Bowser is also referred to as Bowser in the manual. So what's up with Bowser being referred to as multiple different names? Well, I think the reason for this has to do with the Japanese translation of Bowser's name, but I won't be going into that further. Anyway, the Mario Brothers journey consists of 8 worlds with 4 levels in each one. Super Mario Bros. Concept is simple and straight to the point. Make your way to the right and jump until you make it to the end of the level. It's basic, but fun. The game starts off with a level called 1-1, possibly one of the most iconic levels in video game history. This is where you can learn all that you need to know about the game. There's nothing in the game that tells you what buttons to press or where to go, but the game doesn't really have to because the level design is created in a way that allows you to be able to learn the basic controls from the start of the game. For example, if there is no attempt at jumping, the Goomba will kill Mario, so sooner or later you should be able to figure out how to jump. The first level does a great job with its layout and serves as a great tutorial stage. I'll go over the controls now. Mario jumps when the A button is pressed, and depending on how long the button is held, Mario will jump higher. Controlling Mario's speed is possible as well. You can just walk, but if you want to run, you will have to hold down the B button. The controls are good because of the options you have, but controlling the movement of Mario has aged a little bit. The physics just feel a little off, and the movement doesn't quite have the same level of control from the newer Mario games. The movement mostly feels weird in the air. I can't slow down or back up much in the air when jumping out of a sprint. This leads to the game being a little restrictive when Mario is in the air. Just because I don't think the game has the best movement doesn't mean it's bad. Far from it, the controls are quite good and it's possible to get the hang of them. As stated earlier, there are 4 levels in each world. I've only talked about the first level, which is the standard overworld looking level, but there are other kinds of levels too. There are underground levels. These ones tend to have brick ceilings as well as just a ton of bricks in general. There are also levels with a large amount of pits. The elevation is all over the place with these levels, plus there are plenty of floating platforms. I like how these levels are different from the more flat levels. Falling to death can happen a lot more here. There are also water levels. The enemies can't be jumped on, so water levels end up being pretty dangerous. The movement here isn't the most fun to me. I mostly don't like the movement because I can't swim down fast on command. Mario just floats down sort of slow, unless if Mario hovers over a pit. Mario just gets pulled down to what is probably some endless void of darkness. Anyway, these levels aren't my favorite, but it can be satisfying to get through one without too much trouble. Finally, there are castle levels that are the last level in each world. These levels can be pretty challenging. There are so many fire bars. The classic bridge collapse to take out Bowser is at the end of these levels, and it is fun to jump on an axe without getting hurt. This isn't Bowser though. 7 of these guys are fake and are just Bowser's minions, transformed or disguised. I'm not sure. A Toad tells Mario that the princess is in another castle at the end of these levels. It's gotta be tough being the one to give bad news. So many of the levels in this game are really well made, and it is very fun to traverse through them, especially when you can go as fast as possible through most of the level. Now I want to take some time to talk about the art. The game is mostly pretty basic looking. There's simplistic trees, bricks, and other things. This game was made a long time ago, so it's expected to look simple. One thing I didn't like when I was younger was the ground. It has cracks in it and there is no grass, so it doesn't really look like normal ground, but I've grown to like the look of it. This is probably due to my nostalgia from playing the game on the Game Boy Color and playing the style in the Super Mario Maker games. A cool detail that I like is that the clouds and bushes are actually the same sprite, just a different color. I think that's pretty neat. Another thing that's interesting but probably not intentional is the fact that Bowser's fireballs are backwards. I think the graphics overall have a fun look to them. The music in Super Mario Bros. Is so iconic. The overworld theme is a famous classic that I really like. Koji Kondo made the music and I think he did a great job. This is Super Mario Bros., so I'm going to acknowledge Mario's brother, Luigi. This is just a palette swap of Mario, but I like that he is included. He is only playable in the 2-player mode. Mario and Luigi can't run around on the screen at the same time in this mode. The game just flips who is playing once someone dies, and the process repeats. Okay, so the game can be quite hard in some cases. There are some tough enemies, especially the Hammer Bros. They can be super tricky to deal with, especially if you don't have a Fire Flower power-up. Also, the later levels have a lot more spots where precise jumps have to be made, although that wasn't usually too big of a problem for me. The game can be hard, but sometimes it's just downright unfair in some cases. Some of the castle levels act like some sort of maze, and if you go down the wrong path, you will be put back to the previous section of the level. There really is no discernible pattern for this part from what I can tell, so it ends up being a guessing game. How is someone supposed to know how to get through these parts without trial and error? This stuff feels like padding, so the game will be longer. It is crazy how the game has a lot of very good level design, but then there are these 3 maze type levels. One thing that isn't necessarily hard, but more of just brutal, is the fact that once you lose all your lives, it's straight back to the beginning of the game. This is how games worked a lot back then, but that doesn't mean I enjoy it. The game does have these hidden warp zones that allow you to skip some worlds. Since I knew where these were, I used some of them, but it would have been better to at least have Mario go back to the beginning of the world once he runs out of lives. The getting kicked back to the beginning thing was something I didn't experience much until replaying the game this time because I decided to refrain from using save states for this playthrough. I wanted to play the game as if I was playing it back on the NES in the 1980s. I eventually used the save state feature. I ended up creating a save state 2 times, and both of those times were towards the beginning of a level. I didn't end up loading a save state when I first made them. I just wanted to be ready if I decided that I didn't want to try to beat the game in one go anymore. Of course, I loaded the save state that I made at the final level. Sure, this means I won't beat the game the intended way, but hey, I don't have to beat the levels I already completed anymore. I remember using save states when playing the game on the Nintendo Switch before, years ago, and I think using a save state at the beginning of a level is a great way to play the game. Anyway, on to the final level. The last level is the most complicated in the game in my opinion. It's the last of the 3 maze levels. How is anybody supposed to know there's an invisible block there? How are you supposed to know to go down certain pipes? It's kind of a mess, but if you know where to go, the final level isn't that hard. I was able to defeat the real Bowser, and Princess Peach was saved. She doesn't seem to save the Mushroom Kingdom, though. She just tells me there's a new quest. Well, I guess the Mushroom Kingdom is doomed. Well, that's Super Mario Bros. I don't think the game is great in some aspects, but there's a lot of good things about it. Just because I think that there's some bad game design in some of the levels does not mean this is a bad game. Despite the game's flaws, it still is a very well designed game overall. I would definitely recommend playing the game. There is fun to be had whether you play it with or without save states. I have a lot of respect for this game and I've had a lot of fun playing it. Super Mario Bros. Might not be a perfect masterpiece, but it does come pretty close. I haven't even mentioned that the game is quite important in the history of video games. The game played a big role in ending the video game crash of 1983 and might have saved the game industry from going out of existence. Super Mario Bros. Is a big part of gaming history. Speaking of history, I made history by killing Mario and a fake Bowser at the same time for probably the first time in my life. I'd say this takes some insane skill to pull off. I did this by accident.